To tell everyone there is more than enough. Talk about working folks, war and peace, hungry for honesty, hope and release, trying to stay alive until I die. I don't ask for guarantees, but I need high fidelity.
Welcome to another edition of the Battle for Progressive Media. I'm today's host, John Riley. In today's show, we'll be interviewing Lisa Davis of the WBAI Justice and Unity campaign. WBAI is a radio station that's a part of the progressive five-station Pacifica Radio Network, founded in 1949 by anti-war activist Lou Hill. The New York-based station broadcasts at 99.5 FM and on the internet at www.wbai.org. Pacifica is a rare breed of radio stations that not only is almost completely listener-sponsored, listener-supported, but also has elections from its members, its ordinary members, to its governing boards. WBAI is in the midst of an election this fall, which will determine the composition of its local board, which in turn elects representation to the national board, the Pacifica National Board, that has final authority over the network, with stations in some of the largest media markets in the United States. The local station board has the responsibility of setting up the search committee for the general manager and the program director and evaluating them. They're also responsible for helping the station financially through approving its budget and also through helping to raise funds. In the midst of this election, a fight has emerged over the conduct of one local station board member who is charged with undermining the station and making a campaign of unsubstantiated allegations of wrongdoing against various station personnel and racially stereotyping staff. Next, an excerpt of a resolution calling for a meeting to remove multimillionaire and former direct marketing executive Steve Brown. Father Lawrence Lucas, a member of the WBAI local station board and longtime anti-racist activist and member of the WBAI Justice and Unity campaign, reads the resolution.
Motion for a delegates meeting to consider removal of Delegate Steve Brown. And whereas no WBAI local station board member has the right to make unsubstantiated and defamatory allegations against WBAI managers or staff, i.e. without the Pacifica Foundation having accorded any investigation or due process to the accused staff member, or without giving the accused staff member a chance to respond to such accusations. And whereas Mr. Brown has publicly and unilaterally called upon WBAI listeners not to send their membership funds to the station's authorized address based on the previously mentioned unsubstantiated allegation against WBAI personnel, but instead to send them directly to his personal home address. And whereas Mr. Brown widely distributed his public calls to direct donations away from the station's address linked to unsubstantiated allegations of theft of membership and funds and other misconduct against WBAI Program Director Bernard White and other staff members via emails to large email lists of WBAI listeners. And whereas Mr. Brown's claims that monies sent to WBAI cannot be trusted to be deposited and recorded properly run counter to repeated on-air and website announcements over the last several years that station supporters should send donations to a P.O. box as opposed to the station's street address, funds retrieved from which are directly deposited into WBAI's bank account. Whereas the WBAI local station board voted to disassociate itself on March 16, 2006 from an earlier long-running series of unsubstantiated, defamatory, and racially inflammatory allegations by Mr. Brown against Program Director Bernard White and other WBAI staff, see Appendix Roman numeral 2. And whereas Mr. Brown failed to follow the call contained in that motion for all LSB members to desist from making statements that prejudice the performance of WBAI management personnel, perpetuate racist stereotypes, indulge in personal attacks on management and staff, and undermine listener financial support for the station, WBAI delegate Steve Brown shall be removed from the position of WBAI delegate upon the fair and reasonable determination by a 2/3 vote of all the delegates for WBAI for conduct that is adverse to the best interests of the foundation.
Steve Brown is a key leader of the opposition bloc to the Justice and Unity campaign on the WBAI board, which holds the majority. In last fall's election, he used his credentials as a multimillionaire advertising executive as a reason for voters to vote for him, promising to use those skills to benefit the station. The battle for progressive media exposed the less attractive side of his financial history by reporting on allegations of financial misconduct by government agencies against Mr. Brown's company. Brown's company, Raffler, did business under more than 30 names. His company eventually paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to the Post Office, the Federal Trade Commission, and the New York Attorney General's office. He paid that money as a result of consent decrees, which also required his company to reform its business practices. A website, whoisstevebrown.info, gives details about these charges by government agencies and gives excerpts from many newspaper articles describing his company's shady history. For the remainder of the show, I'll be interviewing a candidate for re-election to the WBAI local station board. Lisa Davis is a longtime anti-racist activist, lives in New Jersey, and is a member of the WBAI local station board, seeking re-election on the WBAI Justice and Unity campaign's slate. Welcome to the battle for progressive media, Lisa Davis.
Thank you.
Lisa, tell us about the Justice and Unity campaign. What's the purpose of the slate?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you asked. Justice and Unity, we are a strong, committed group of community activists. We are multicultural. We have a wide range of backgrounds that are a part of our slate, and that's very important to us. And we are very committed to the people. We are dedicated. We are out there in the communities. We are on the front line of major battles going on, and we all believe in that every culture, every community has the right to self-empowerment and to self-determination. And we believe that that is critical. We believe that the media is a vital tool. Actually, the media can be a vital tool either way. It can be a vital tool and an instrument for liberation, or it can be used as an instrument of oppression. And we know in this country, more often than not, it has been used as an instrument of oppression or propaganda, which is why WBAI is so critical. But in order to be able to talk about the people, you have to have the people at the table. It's not just good enough to just report on what someone is doing. You have to have the community involved. And the only way to have the community involved is to go out to the community and have people from the community at these tables and on these boards. And that's very important to Justice and Unity. Progressive people, I should say, people who are progressive.
What kind of people are running on this slate?
In addition to yours truly, Lisa Davis, we have Omawale Clay. Omawale Clay is with the December 12th movement. We have Tibby Brooks. Tibby Brooks works with the Free Mumia Coalition. Myself, I work with the Tri-State Likeness Support Coalition and many other organizations. Sarah Flounders, who is with the International Action Center. Marianela Tricoci, she works with Women's Workers for Peace, which is a Bronx Latina group. We have Wellington Ichekare, he is a longtime Ecuadorian labor and solidarity activist. And Marian Borenstein, she works with the Black Radical Congress. And we have Bokeem Nayari, and he is with the Pacifica campaign, organizer, activist. He's also working with peace coalitions against the war. And these are just some of the organizations that many of us work with. We are so involved with so many different ones.
Lisa, can you talk about the accomplishments of the Justice and Unity campaign as a majority on the WBAI local station board?
There have been many accomplishments, but the things that mean the most to me, and this is one of the things that Justice and Unity does great, in addition to the other things that we do, but community outreach. We have done so much community outreach in terms of going out into the community, putting a very personal face on WBAI. There are so many things that are going on. WBAI is a peace and justice radio, and it has a very, very rich cultural history of reporting on movements and issues and people that mainstream media has ignored, and as a result, we have a tremendous archive. So that's been a tremendous, great thing about Justice and Unity, that we have enhanced WBAI's presence even more in the community. Another thing that Justice and Unity has been a part of, a very big part of, was helping to raising money, I should say, to fund the archives, the audio archives. And that has been a tremendous tool, because WBAI, within the last year, you can measure that there have been over 6 million downloads, 6 million files downloaded from its programming. And that programming, those downloads are not just coming from New York. They are coming from all over the world. I mean, China does quite a few downloads. Japan, Ghana, hits from all over the place. So that is a tremendous accomplishment that Justice and Unity has done. Another great accomplishment, Justice and Unity, or one of our Justice and Unity representatives, the chair of the audit committee. The chair of our audit committee, a very, very strong Justice and Unity person, Nia Bediako. She is the chair, and under her leadership, since she has been the chair, the National Audit Committee has really been able to take off and get some work done. One of the things that we're working with the National Finance Committee, and of course the CFO and the auditor, is compiling a book that would unify procedures for reporting and for record keeping and bookkeeping, not just within WBAI, but across the Pacifica network. So that's very important to Justice and Unity. And another committee, one that I was very instrumental in helping to establish, because we believe that racism, W.E.B. Du Bois said that the issue of race is going to be one of the major issues of the 20th century, and here we are going into the 21st century, and it's still one of the major issues, a big issue. And we have to confront that. We have to have the maturity to do that. Justice and Unity is all about confronting these issues and anti-racism training. And we helped to establish, although there was a fight to do this, it's not been easy, but on the national board, we established a committee to investigate allegations of racism and sexism, not just to investigate, but also to deal with these issues. And I'm very proud that Justice and Unity was a major player in helping to establish that.
A member of the opposition bloc to your slate, Lisa, by the name of Steve Brown, is a multimillionaire and former advertising executive who made controversial attacks on progressive program director Bernard White and repeatedly called for his firing. Talk about Steve Brown's role on the board.
When I think about him, it reminds me of all of the unpleasantness that is going on the board, all of the racism and the battles that you would not think one would have to fight when we think about peace and justice radio. Steve Brown recently, just one example of the many things that he has done, which has been very disturbing, very divisive, things that ultimately undermine the station. And one of the things that he did, he put out in an email accusing Bernard White of stealing membership. There was no investigation or anything like that done, and he just sent it widely and distributed. This is very destructive. This is something that is not good. It's very demoralizing and demeaning to the staff. But again, I think we have to come to the realization, now I have nothing to say that somebody ultimately is working for the government or anything like this, but there have been these kind of tactics before that were deliberately designed to undermine and to bring a station down. But when I see people like Steve Brown, and there's more than one, he's not just one individual. This is a whole group of individuals. This gets at the heart and the soul of what the battle is about, and the importance of the station, the importance of people really paying close attention to these elections and to making sure that we have very progressive people on the board, because this is an undercurrent. Maybe an undercurrent isn't even the correct word, because it goes on throughout the network. And the racism, the horrific statements, the allegations that are constantly made against people and against people at that station who are progressive, and especially progressive black people, is astounding. And it has to stop, and we need strong people on these boards to make sure that it does, because if WBAI and the Pacifica Foundation goes down, it is only going to serve an oppressive government. That is something that they would want, and that is something that we must fight against. We need strong people, strong progressive people, strong people who are proud of who they are on these boards.
Talk about the role of the opposition bloc on the WBAI local board.
Well, when we talk about Steve Brown, we are talking about the opposition bloc and what they have done. Very divisive. They will launch so many unsubstantiated allegations against people at the station. And I am all for, of course, if there's something that, I'm all for criticism. I think that criticism can be helpful. And certainly if there are things that need to be improved, of course, it should be said and they should be improved. And certainly if anybody ever suspected anybody of wrongdoing, of course, there should be an investigation. But there should be ways about going about doing things when you continue to launch unsubstantiated attacks against people, especially against the staff. You do not give people a chance to respond, or maybe there have been things, one of the things that they've talked about is embezzlement. Charges of embezzlement have been investigated. They were thoroughly investigated, and no wrongdoing was found. And yet they have continued over and over again to repeat charges of embezzlement. Unsubstantiated, unfounded charges of embezzlement. They will put out half-truths, and they have no problems with distortions and with just saying things that are not true at all. And this is not a fair environment at all for anybody to work in. I'm totally against people using those kind of tactics. I do not think that should be done, and that has gone on tremendously. Another example of something that when I first got on the board, I could not imagine that I would be sitting on a board that is supposed to be progressive, and to witness a man curse a female out the way that this individual who, Paul DiRienzo, he's no longer on the board, but he was the one who did that. And it was the chair of the board, Vajra Kilgour. Vajra happens to be white, and so is Paul DiRienzo. But I don't think that anybody should yell the F invective repeatedly at a female or anyone for no reason whatsoever. And that is what he did. His behavior was abominable. He was suspended for 6 months. And one of the conditions that he had to come back, if he was going to return to the board, would be that he would apologize. He did not do that. Of course, Justice and Unity were the people who stood up on the board to say, this is wrong. The others did not. They supported him, they embraced him, and they challenged us and literally lambasted us for suspending him.
Lisa, talk about your opponents in the election. They all call themselves independents, are they?
When I hear that, I have to laugh, because I'm reminded of the saying, although a rose certainly does not describe anyone, I would say here, but a rose by any other name is still a rose. They can call themselves whatever name they want to, but the fact of the matter is that they are supported and endorsed by people like Steve Brown, who are now calling themselves independents. The opposition on the board, they've called themselves Listprog, then ACE, now independents, but there might be one or two people who might be running that are truly independent of any particular coalition on the board, but the group of people that are identifying themselves as independent, and that should be a clue, because when you have about 10 or 12 people running and they're all saying, I'm the independent, that's a rehearsed answer. They are not. And in fact, there was an individual who sent an email out, Laura Williams, and she sent it out all over, and she really did not like the tactics that they were using to recruit people. They did an email. It was kind of like email candidates or mail order candidates, and they said that they were ready to support her, ready to endorse her, and they had not even spoke with her. So this just gives you an example of the the opposition bloc, who are supposed to be independents. And she also sent emails showing how there was communication saying that they were all going to be meeting at a certain place. If she would come down to meet, she would meet other people there. So no, they're not independent, and they should just identify themselves that they are running as a coalition. What are they hiding? And I think that some people are not aware of what they're getting themselves into. Perfect, to be honest with you.
Critics of the Justice and Unity campaign claim that they can restore the station's financial stability by changing the programming. For example, bringing back wealthy alternative health entrepreneur Gary Null to the airwaves and remove programs that they claim are anti-white. How do you respond?
When I hear those statements again, I sort of have to go back to the premise of justice and unity that are about the right of communities of color and disenfranchised people to self-determination and to determine what they want on the air. Basically, what that argument is about is that they just want to get rid of certain programmers and certain people, and definitely the program director, Bernard White. They do not like voices that are independent of quote-unquote white society. They do not like voices that are going to stand up strongly and tell it like it is. There has been a lot of pain in this country, and Black people and people who have been victimized by that should not have to dance around and put in a little box because you don't want to offend certain people by telling the truth. We have a right to tell the truth. We have a right to our voice, and we have a right to be at the table and to be as strong as we want to be about presenting who we are. We do not have to allow anybody else to box us in and define who we are. That ultimately is the situation that I feel is going on when I hear attacks about the program. In terms of the financial stability, there is no one bullet answer that is going to really deal holistically with what is going on. People need to understand when we talk about the finances, first of all, this country and the economy, and especially New York, because New York was affected. We might want to act like we were not, but when 9/11 happened, New York took a tremendous hit economically in terms of the loss of lives, and that has an effect on people. There's been an economic downturn. The struggle with WBAI in terms of their financial stability is one that correlates with what is going on with the economy and people in general. During weak economies, people cannot give the way they would like to. We also need to understand very clearly that WBAI, unlike the other sister stations, is saddled, burdened with a financial burden that the others do not have. We pay one reason because of where we're located, 120 Wall Street, which means we really need to move out of there. And Justice and Unity has been working with the Capitol campaign, and we need to really up our efforts even more. So that's about a $250,000 rent. Most of the other stations pay. The one that pays closest in rent to us, I would say a year, would be WPFW, which is roughly $150,000, and then the other stations barely pay that. Some pay even zero because they own their own building. So that's an expense that ultimately we can do something about. But we also have to realize that there is an expense which is a fixed expense, at least in the sense that we cannot do anything about, and that is the expense to transmit the signal. Now, I think this is worth it because the message that WBAI transmits to people we must hear, which we really don't have a choice because New York City is a city of tall buildings, so signals cannot go through the walls. It costs close to $300,000 a year to transmit our signal from the top of the Empire State Building, and these costs escalate. And one of the things that happened when the World Trade Center came down, because that at least was other space, which meant it was competition to the Empire State Building, that at least was other space. So the Empire State Building, they were maybe a little more reasonable with their fees, but now that the World Trade Center is gone, the Empire State Building is it in terms of broadcasters who want to broadcast a strong signal to its signal area. So that is an expense we have got to understand that is not going to go down. And do you want to know what the other stations pay on the average to transmit their signal? They pay roughly a rough estimate of about $50,000, $60,000. Some of them, others of them are paying less than that. So when we look at what WBAI is facing and the tremendous cost that WBAI incurs that the other stations do not, I mean, one of the things that the opposition bloc is saying that WBAI owes money to the national office. Well, whenever we talk about budgets, we have to talk about them holistically. We need to look at what is going on. But a strong indicator that our programming is very relevant are those downloads that are being requested from our archives. Over 6 million downloads so far, at least 23,000 so far, individual or unique requests from computers. I think that is something to be proud of, and requests from all over the world. That says a whole lot. When you look at all these things, and that's what you need to do, it goes to show WBAI is very relevant and very important. And another thing that I must also say when we talk about the importance of WBAI, when I think about the Gina 6, I cannot tell you the amount of people I heard who listened to mainstream media who basically began to hear about the Gina 6 within the last 3 weeks when there was a big call for people to go to Louisiana. If you listen to WBAI, you heard about the Gina 6 at least 6, 7, 8 months earlier. If you listen to WBAI, you could prepare and organize to go down to Louisiana. Those are the listeners to WBAI. That's what we were doing. Whereas the ones who primarily listened to the mainstream media were just now getting it about 2 days before they had the big demonstration in Gina. So that's very critical, very crucial.
What are the plans of the WBAI Justice and Unity campaign in the months to come?
Put the word out to look, to really do even more research. We have been doing this, but it needs to be even more. We are determined more than ever to find another building for WBAI. That is a must. We must do that. We must own our own. Another thing that we really want to work on more is even more outreach to listeners. We have a tremendous an archive that is absolutely gold. There are ways by using the internet that we can generate various revenue streams that are going to be something that people can budget for. And it's also very important to make people understand that, first of all, every dollar, sometimes when you hear the fund drive, if you can't, donate the amount, for the premium, every dollar counts. Every amount that you can donate does help and is appreciated. But you also need to understand that when you hear about these premiums, because this is the way I've been able to get so much, and I mean, I'm starting to develop quite a library, you can do monthly installment plans that will fit your budget. So we need to make people understand this more, and also to have many more fundraisers. They could be great community events. I think it would be great sometimes to maybe hold fundraisers with some organizations like the Coalition to help the homeless.
That's it for the show. Tune in again in 2 weeks for an interview with Sarah Flounders, also a member of the Justice and Unity campaign. For more information on the Justice and Unity campaign, go to www.justiceunity.org or call 212-591-2111.